All right, for anyone who has recently joined, just make sure you can hear me if you have to adjust your volume. Sort of using a new microphone / camera setup. So I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me clearly. We're going to go ahead and get started now. So I do thank you guys for joining us. If you're new to these webinars or unfamiliar, we host these once a month, and what we do is I go over some of the new features, if there are anything new has been added to any of our apps, any changes, any bugs that we found. We like to review everything that we sort of change over the course of that month. And this month is, every so often we like to, we always accept feedback, and we always want you guys to, answer or ask questions. And sometimes we'll sort of dedicate a webinar session to just sort of an open QA sort of thing. So we were going to do that, which we still kind of are, but there are a few things that I want to go over. Some of the top requests I think that we've had from customers in the last couple of weeks. So I kind of want to review those with you, just to kind of make it easier, not only on us in tech, but for you guys that can maybe get some of the issues or some of the requests that you guys have resolved a little bit quicker, or handled just a little bit quicker, instead of waiting for somebody at Identikit to fulfill that request. And I'll kind of explain as we go along. So we're going to talk a little bit about user management, which is a feature in your school manager that sort of allows you to manage who has access to your apps and what they can do within those apps. And that's sort of been a big request this week. Schools will call or email in and ask, hey, such and such is leaving the school. Can you remove them? Such and such is a new staff member at the school. Can you add them? And can you give them these roles? And can you do this and that? And, while we love, we don't mind fulfilling that request, this is actually something you guys can do. So, maybe it's, some of the customers, maybe you guys aren't aware that you can actually do this stuff within your school manager. So I just kind of want to go over that as well, as a couple of other things. And that will include how to share a station, and then also how to share settings. And that one will be big for districts who may want uniformity across all their schools. You may want all of your schools to have the exact same badges, the exact same badge placement, all the same devices. Basically, a visitor can go into any school, and they're going to have the same process no matter where they go. If one school accepts a webcam and you have to take a photo, then the next school is going to do the same thing. So you have sort of that uniformity across your schools. And we've been getting a lot of requests for that. So I want to kind of talk about those as well. On top of being, these webinars are always an open forum. So whether you have questions about something that we're talking about or about something completely different, please don't hesitate to go ahead and type that question into chat, either into direct chat or into the Q&A section there. And I always get to those questions towards the end of the webinar. And I'll do that today as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them out. If it's something that I'm talking about, great. Even if it's not, we still want to know any feedback, anything like that. We kind of want to know that as well. So just sort of keep that in mind. And if you do miss any part of this webinar, we do record them. So if you're registered, you'll get a link once the video is available, and you'll be able to watch that recording. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to first talk about user management. And this is, like I said, the ability to dictate who has access to your apps and what they can do. And so if you're looking at the screen here, I have my test school up. And this is just a test school that we have with a lot of users, and we're sort of already on that user management screen. If you're logged into your school manager, all you have to do is click on users there on the left-hand side, and that'll bring you to this page. And this will just sort of give you a running list of any user who currently has access to your apps, and in what capacity. And so what we're looking at here, just as some examples, we've got many users that are primarily in the admin role. We have one user here that's in the director role. And then we have a user here at the top that has a couple of roles. So I kind of want to explain what these roles are and how you should be assigning people the appropriate roles. Because there are some mistakes here that, what we're looking at here, there is at least one mistake. So I kind of want to explain that. So, most of our users here are admin. Admins that pretty much, speaks for itself. An admin role is going to have unrestricted access to absolutely everything within the school manager. They can make settings changes. They can add, remove badges. They can add, remove preloaded lists. They can pretty much do anything. So you really want to be cognizant of, who you're giving access to, especially when that's admin access. And then you want to also be sure that you're reviewing this user list quite often. No, I mean, not often, but, every semester, a couple of times a year, especially if turnover rate is high and you're always having new people come in and old people that are leaving. You want this list to stay up to date. You don't want people to continue to have access to your apps when they no longer have access to the school or are no longer employed by the school. So something to kind of keep in mind. And as we scroll down, we see one with the director role. It's not a role that's used primarily a lot anymore. The director role really has access to reporting and to settings, and that's it. But we don't really use that a lot. We used to have directors that were local to you, the school, but we really don't do that anymore. So director is kind of a role that we don't use. There are some other roles. They may not be assigned here, but let's go ahead and just take a look at the roles. If you hit the plus sign next to any of your users there, you can sort of reassign roles if you need to. So we have admin, user, director, notification, and station kiosk. So admin, we kind of went over. User role has access to reporting. Like I said, the director role has access to reporting and settings. The notification role only has access to notifications, and those include sexual offender notifications, emergency notifications, and no-go list notifications. So we have a role specifically for that. And then our final role is our station kiosk role. And that one's very important too, and we're going to kind of discuss that one a little bit more. Actually, we're going to discuss it right now as it relates to this first user that we see listed here. You can see this user has a couple of roles assigned to them. And one of those roles is actually the admin role. And the admin role, as I explained, is a role that encompasses everything. So if you have the admin role assigned to a user, you don't need any other roles there. And this is kind of where that mistake comes in. You see this user's got the admin role and the station kiosk role. This is not correct. This is not how we want it, especially for a station kiosk user. In this case, this is an organization user or a station kiosk user. These are default accounts that we create for you guys so that you can use them as at your check-in stations. And we do not set these accounts as admins because we don't want your visitors to be able to bypass scanning a driver's license, bypass sexual offender check, or bypass any of those, critical check-in processes that you guys might have in place. We don't want that. We definitely know that you don't want that. So when you're creating these accounts, and when we create these accounts, these organization accounts, you only want that station kiosk user. And I'm gonna go ahead and delete that admin role. So this looks a little bit more correct. That organization user has a station kiosk role. They cannot make settings changes. They can't even log into the school manager. So it's strictly for use with the check-in and checkout system, especially when visitors are using the system and your secretaries are not, or you are not. This is a customer-facing system. You want them to go through the processes as you have them laid out. So if you need to add any users here, you can just type in their email address there at the top, click on invite. Do not share your invite emails. If you are invited or you invite somebody else and then they forward their invite to another person, that's not going to work. Each person, when they get an invite through this area, a specific custom link is sent to that person. So if you share that link, it'll sort of mess up that person's account. We don't want that. So be sure that you're inviting your users here, and then you do have the ability to create those organization users as well. And I kind of just described that user just primarily used as a check-in station account. It's not tied to any one person. It's just sort of a generalized account for the school. And you can do that right there. So like I said, always a good idea to come in here every so often and just review this list. Make sure that, former employees are no longer in this list. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that on a school when helping a school. Hey, do we need to clean up your list? And they'll go through it and realize that a lot of people still have access that shouldn't. So I know it's not something that we think about. Even we don't think about a lot, but especially if you have a lot of users, it's always a good idea to come in here every so often and sort of manage that list and make sure it's all good. So the next topic that we want to go over are sharing settings and sharing stations. We've had a lot of requests recently for both of these actually. And so I kind of want to just describe what they are and how they can benefit you. So let's start with sharing settings because they are two different things. We've got sharing settings and we've got sharing station. And they are two different things. So let's look at sharing the settings first. We're already in our school manager now. As we know, our school manager and our web client, I'm going to bring up the web client here because I have a station that we already have set up. And actually, I'm going to go into the settings. If you're a regular user of Identikit apps, you know that we have settings. There's a lot of settings. We have settings in our school manager, and I'm referring to badge settings. So, all your badges that you have listed here, if you need to add or remove badges or make any changes to additional info or anything else with that badge, auto logout, things like that, you have to do that in your school manager. But then we have these settings too, in our client, and these are, badge settings also. And we know that sometimes that can be confusing. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit as it relates to sharing settings. The settings that we see here in our client, these are how that specific client or check-in station functions. What devices that station has. Are those devices required? Things like that. It's really more about devices and sort of setting up that check-in process. That's really what these settings are. And it's a per station or per check-in station. These settings. So if you have multiple check-in stations, these settings only affect that one station. So you'd have to go to other stations to make any of those changes. And that's sort of where sharing settings comes in. So we have two ways that we can share settings. We can share settings from the school manager standpoint. We can set, share all the badges that you've created, all the additional info that you have for each badge, auto logout time, notification settings, things like that. Anything in your school manager, you can basically use across all your school managers. You can make that uniform across all your school managers if you want. And then, like I said, we have a lot of districts that sort of want that uniformity across all their schools. So this is kind of how you would do that. And I'm gonna go to the settings menu here in the manager. And there's one option we want to look at. It's called import export local manager settings. And this actually started out on version 3 when we migrated from version 3 to version 4. This was an easy way to migrate settings that you may have had for version 3. But this is a good way to migrate settings across schools for version 4. So if you go ahead and click on import export local manager settings, you're going to be taken to this screen. And really, you've got just two basic options here. You can export the INI file, or you can import the INI file. So the way that you really want to do this, if you are a district that wants your schools to all be uniform, they all need the same badges, same additional info, same selection, same everything. You really want to kind of get one school set up. So let's say we have this school set up, and by set up, I mean, come in here, make sure that all your badges are there that you're going to use. And then make sure that each badge is configured with all the additional info that you need. All the answers for each additional info, if you have answers or are allowing them to type in their own answers. Basically, you want to set up your manager to its fullest. And then once you sort of have your manager set up and you know that I want all my schools to look like this. I want every school to look exactly like this manager does. And once you're to that point, that's when you're going to go ahead and click on import, export, local manager settings. And then you're going to go ahead and click export to INI file. And that'll go ahead and prepare that file and give you a little download link that you can go ahead and download it. Now you might get this message, Chrome, or if you use another web browser, that the file's not safe. It is safe. It's okay. So go ahead and click on keep or go ahead and download the file. And now you have your file. So, you know, as you go to your other schools, and you go into that school's manager and you're like, hey, you know, I want this school to look exactly like the other school I just did. Well, now you've got that INI file, and pretty simple to go in here and just click on import. Go ahead and locate that file and then choose what you want to import. Do you want to import the global settings? Do you want to import label settings? And then do you want to import additional info settings? So you can choose to bypass some of that information. Label settings would include badges, any badges that you've created. Additional info would handle additional info, and then global settings would handle anything under global badge settings here. So you can kind of pick and choose what you want to import into that school. Generally speaking, though, you're going to want to import all of it. So you probably won't have to mess with any of those options really, and then just click on browse and go ahead and locate that same INI file that we just downloaded. I might be able to find it here. Let's see, export. Maybe. Let's see. Well, I don't see it, but that's okay. This school already has all the settings that we need anyway. But you would just find that file, go ahead and import it. Make sure it does say successful. When you click on browse, you find the file there and then click upload. You will get a little green message saying that it has been successful. And then obviously go and verify the settings, badge settings right here, and just make sure that all your badges are listed there correctly. And that all the additional info is there also. And that just makes it a lot easier to set up schools. You don't have to go into each individual school, especially if you have a lot of schools where you have to go and configure all these things. Especially when you talk about adding new badges, you know, you have the ability to create up to 20 badges. And if you have to do that for each school manually, plus the additional info for each of those badges, that can get pretty time consuming pretty quickly. So this will alleviate a lot of that time and headache that it would take to sort of set these schools up. And so that's the school manager portion of it. So that's not going to affect any of the other check-in stations, you know, it handles the badges and the labels and things, but, you know, your check-in devices, it doesn't handle any of that. So if you wanted to sort of clone your stations, we actually have a way to share the settings there as well. So let's go ahead and switch over to the web client here, and I already have a client station set up, and I'm already sort of in the settings menu. So if you click on the left menu bar and go into settings, we're going to scroll all the way to the very bottom under station settings, and then we're going to look for share settings right here. So this is sort of the same way, kind of the same way as the school manager works, a little bit different. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So we're going to go ahead and click on share settings. And as you can see, what it does is it generates a URL. So the URL is basically the equivalent of our INI file in the manager. The URL contains all the settings that we need from this station, and that includes all the device settings. And let me go ahead and scroll up and kind of explain what it has. All the device settings, anything that you may have set up with quick checkout, anything with Jiffy Pass, anything in badge settings here. So if you click on a badge within badge settings, all your check-in settings, if you have a webcam set up, any of the options there that were enabled or disabled, this is kind of everything that it saves over or copies over with that URL, including your devices. So, and then now how to use that URL. So kind of the same way, you'll want to copy it. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And then we're going to go ahead and do a reset so I can kind of show you how a new station would be set up using that URL. So, and I had this request just yesterday, got a brand new district, and they're sort of going school by school, and they're setting up these check-in stations. And they're finding that it's a little bit time consuming to actually have to do this all manually. Go in there and create the station, create all your devices for that station, and then sort of mess with all the other settings there. How is it that we can make it easier to import all of those settings, especially when you have a lot of check-in stations to do for a lot of schools? So when you're going through and you're setting up that station, and a lot of times when we're helping you with this, us in tech support, we'll sort of guide you through this as well. But if you're setting up a brand new station and you already have that URL, what you want to do is we're going to set up a brand new station, and we're going to, under settings template, we're going to choose template URL. We're going to choose the school that we're setting up. And since I'm under a lot of schools, there's a lot there, but I'm going to choose my test school, and then we're going to create a station name. And I'm just going to use testing, and then we're going to actually paste that template URL. And that URL is going to tell it that, hey, we want to use these settings, these badges, these devices for this check-in station. So we're gonna skip over printing badges here. We're gonna kind of get back to the main screen, and then we're gonna go in to our settings and just kind of see that the badges are there. See that if we did have anything set, that they are still set the exact same way that it was before. Now, a lot of these settings were actually disabled. So we see that they're still disabled. I didn't have any devices in here, but we would see devices. And then, like I said, any other setting in here. The only thing it does not do, it does not put your system into offline mode. You would still have to kind of come here and click activate offline support for that. But other than that, it sort of just clones the check-in station settings and badges and devices. So it just makes it a lot easier to set up these stations quickly. And you can do this all from one central location. You can sort of create your station, do the station reset like I did to show you the template URL. And then as long as you are an admin under other schools, you can sort of select your schools and then create your stations all on the same PC. So you can sort of get every station set up. And then at the schools on the actual system, you can actually just replace the system. And actually, let me go ahead and show you that. So if you had all these stations already set up before, right? You did it all from one PC. All these schools kind of have all set up, and now you're at each school and you sort of want to get the station, you want to clone that station that you've already set up, that you've already created. So we actually have a clone option. So when you go through and you get to the station setup options, you're just going to click on clone. And when you click on clone, find the school, and then just find the station name that you want to clone. Give it a new name. And then just hit clone. And that will go ahead and clone that station that you've already set up. So depending on how you set up stations, if individual schools do it themselves, or even if we're doing it, or if you have somebody that's sort of setting up all the stations, we sort of have an easy way to do that. And that's sort of sharing settings across the school manager and across the web client. So the process is a little bit different, but it's not too difficult. It's really about just going in there and activating it, and then either downloading the INI file or copying and pasting the URL to use with it within the web client. So it just kind of makes it easier. I think both ways are easier than having to go in there and manually sort of type out all this information, especially when you have a lot of customization. You have a lot of badges, you have a lot of additional info that you have in there, and it would just be time consuming. So we hope that it helps you out. And we want the feedback, on it. If you need help in sort of getting it set up, or if you see any problems with it, please reach out to us. Let us know. Even if you need some assistance with sort of getting it set up, we can definitely do that. So just sort of reach out. And so now and then that's sharing settings. That's not creating a separate station, or, it's just really sharing settings across multiple schools or across multiple check-in stations. But what about, especially now when you don't have a lot of visitors in your school, or you don't have a lot of staff, or, people might be working remotely, is there a way that you can sort of share a station? So instead of having a user come into your computer to do a check-in or check-out or whatever the case may be, why can't they pull it up on their phone? Why can't they pull up that station on their phone, on their own device, and do that check-in? They can. And sort of that's what sharing a station is about. So this is not a school manager feature. This is a web client feature. So this is something that you'll want to go to your check-in station for. And we're going to go back into settings here. And you probably noticed the share station option when we're talking about share settings. It's actually right below it, share station right here. And it works kind of the same way as share settings, in that it's going to create a URL that your users will use. And then your URL, it'll just work a little bit differently than what we did for the sharing the settings. So let's kind of explain that a little bit. So when we click on share station, it kind of gives you a description as to what share station is. And so we create a secure URL to share the station with anyone. Users with the URL will be able to open the station on any device without login. And that's really the key point. Not only are we answering the question, how can we allow a person to check in on their own device, but how can we do it without any login required? If you know our system, you know that in order to use it, you have to log in. You have to have an Identikit account, and you have to log in with that account. But obviously, all of our users, our parents, students, they're not going to create accounts, and we don't want them to. We want them to be able to use the system very quickly and easily. So we've sort of bypassed that account creation. Obviously, we don't have to set up the station. We're sharing a station that's already been set up. And then that allows that station to be accessed remotely. And there's really no limit on how many users can use this link at one time. We have a district that had about 15,000 people using it at once. And that's a pretty sizable amount, but there's no limit on how often you can pass this URL around. Now, that's not to say that you don't want to just hand it out to anybody. Especially when you're doing SSC checks and some of this other stuff, but and you always have the option to sort of cancel the URL and disable it right away. So you always have that, and you can sort of disable it for everyone. It'll sort of stop working right then and there. So, and we're going to explain that here. So, to share station, you go ahead and click share station, and kind of like share settings, it sort of creates this URL. And you can actually hit copy URL, and it'll copy that URL to the clipboard. And so what we're going to do, we're going to bring up in incognito mode. We're going to bring up that URL. And it just goes right to the check-in station. And this is what it would do on your phone, on your device, phone, tablet, whatever the case may be. You would not get a login screen. It would go right to this screen. So you could then go ahead and click check in or check out and do what it is that you need to do. So it makes sharing your station without a lot of human interaction with any one station, a lot easier. So they can use their own device to sort of check in, and it allows you to sort of have an expiration on that URL. So if you want that to expire in so many days, then you can have it expire in so many days. And this is, and it's actually in hours. It will convert it to days for you right here. 745 hours is roughly a month. It's about 31 days. So you would just type in your expiration date there. But you can always unshare too. So you always have the unshare station that will actually just disable the URL right then and there. If anybody happens to be using it, it won't work anymore. So that's an easy way to sort of shut it down right away and very quickly. Or allow that expiration to, allow it to expire. And then you can sort of re-up it or reset that registration if you'd like. Just go ahead and reset registration. That will reset it back to whatever the default number is that you set it to. But the URL won't change, so they'll be able to continue to use it without having to give out another password or another URL. If you do unshare the station and reshare, and now let me sort of make sure. Yes, it does. If you unshare the station and you sort of disable it from working, and then you decide to share it again, you will have to give them a new URL. It will generate a new URL if you do turn it off and back on, but not when you reset expiration. No, that'll keep the same URL. So if you need to keep it going, you sort of can. But this just allows it, and we've had customers give this out to parents, to, I don't think the students really too much, but primarily if parents have to check in and they don't want them coming into the building, or if staff have to check in from home, or things like that, that's kind of been the primary use of remote links or share station. But yeah, I mean, we encourage you guys to try it, and it's really to avoid a clustering of people at any one system, especially now when we want to sort of stay socially distant. This has been a really big help, I think, for a lot of people. So if you aren't familiar with it and sort of want to get it set up, need some help with it, just give our techs a call. We'll walk you through sharing the station and sharing settings. Anything that we talked about today, please reach out to us. Let us know, and we'll be glad to help you guys out. Okay, so here's a question from Michael Brown. Is there a way to share URL indefinitely? In our case, we have unattended kiosks outside of our schools, and sometimes people click log out and we will need to log back in again. There's no way to set the expiration to indefinite. You always have to have a hard end date on that. I mean, the only way that the share station link would continue is if you reset, if you went in there and hit reset expiration every time it expired. I mean, you could put, the equivalent of in hours of 365 days, a year. You could put the equivalent of that in hours and it wouldn't expire until a year. It kind of brings up an interesting question. I don't know if there's a limit on the expiration date or how far ahead you can actually have it expire. That'll be something I actually have to test, but that would be the only way to do it now, to have it quote unquote indefinitely, would be to keep resetting the expiration when it expires, or just set it to a longer period in between expirations. Good question. Any other questions about anything that I talked about? Anything that you guys have seen, or any feedback, any issues that you have? We always get calls into tech, but I like to mention it here just to see if anybody has anything they want me to show them how to do. If you're unfamiliar with our doc site, let me go ahead and bring that up. I have it up here. This is doc.identikit.com. This is everything that has to do with our software, how to do anything, what everything is and means, all the options that are there and what they do. And I add to this, almost on a weekly basis. You can always see what updates to the user guide have been added here. The most recent being on January 28th. Any patch notes for our apps will be listed here too. And then really just sort of a general breakdown of all of our apps and everything that they can do. So definitely a good resource if you have any questions about how something works. Okay, another question here. Is it possible to share station for visitor, volunteer, check-in /out? It definitely is. That's kind of the whole, I think that would be what a lot of people use the share station. I mean, maybe volunteers, visitors, sure, yeah. It's really up to you, who you want to use those share stations. Obviously you can't scan an ID if they're using their phone. I mean, we do have ways that they can use their phone's camera to scan their driver's license, and you can still do those sexual offender checks. But you can turn that off too. But yeah, you can definitely share station for visitor volunteer. And generally speaking, what you'll want to do is, and actually, I'm glad you asked that, Elizabeth, because it sort of brings me to something else that I wanted to mention in regards to sharing stations. Generally, what you want to do is you want to get that station set up exactly how you want it before you share. And I kind of mentioned that when we were talking about the school manager, before you share the INI file, go ahead and make sure everything's correct first, get all your settings in there. And you kind of want to do the same thing with the web client before you share station. If it's going to be a shared station that only visitors or volunteers are going to use, well, then you don't need Tardy, the Tardy badge. You don't need, other employee badges. So you can really go in here and limit the badges that are shown for that share station. So like, for example, if I didn't want visitor as a part of my share station, I would come in here and I would go to badge display and I would disable visitor. That way it's just not going to display when I click check in. And then subsequently, it's not going to display when anybody clicks check in using that share station link. So you can really kind of customize that the shared station that you have just by customizing your station in general. That's a good question though. Yeah, very good question. So if you need help getting that set up for visitors and volunteers, give us a call and we'll help you get it set up. Yeah, definitely. So, and that's another good use of it is, if you have one check-in line, one system, one computer, really, basically that's your check-in station. And you have a lot of people, a lot of different groups of people checking in. You might have students and staff and parents and whoever else trying to check in, and your line gets long. Share station can kind of alleviate that. You can have one group or several groups of people use the share station link to check in or check out. And then have whoever use the actual computer to check in and check out. So you really sort of, limit who is waiting in line and who can quickly, check in. Exactly. So and that's really kind of what you want to do. You create this whole station, like you go through, just like you were creating a station normally to use. You create a whole station, you get it all set up the way that you want. And really that station is just used for share station. That's it. You're not going to use it. You're really just setting it up so that your users can use it. So you're going to share the URL, and they're going to actually be the ones that click on it and click check in and do all this stuff. So yeah, definitely create your own station just for that. And when you do it that way, for the station name, that's what you sort of make for the station name, make it something like this was a share station, something that can tell you or identify to you that that's what it is, that it is a station that you are sharing with other people, you're sharing with volunteers, or you're sharing with visitors, or whatever the case may be. Very, very good question in there. Are there any new options in the client/devices due to the new badge printer? No, actually there's not. Let me go ahead and bring up that new badge printer. For those of you who might be unaware that we do have a new device. Let me sort of move that out of the way here. We do have a new device here, and let me go ahead and go to add a new device. And so you can see that. This is the Bixelon printer right here. There's actually no settings that the Dymo printer doesn't have already. Now the Bixelon does get set up a little bit differently. So if you have a new Bixelon or you just got one from us and you don't have it set up yet, the setup is a bit different than the Dymo. The Dymo was really a plug and play device where you could plug it in and basically it worked. The Bixelon's kind of not. So there's some setup steps that are required before that'll actually work correctly. But nothing added that you really have to worry about here though. Once we sort of get the printer set up and configured correctly, setting it up within your web client is pretty much the same as setting it up within, setting a Dymo up within your web client. And we will have a Dymo, or not a Dymo, a Bixalon support video up on our website, hopefully by the end of next week. We are working on that support video, and that'll sort of go into how to get it installed, how to calibrate the device, what you have to set the label sizes to, and things like that. All right, good questions. Why did we switch over to Bixalon? It's a great question. It's actually through no fault of our own. Dymo has released new printers. It's the Dymo 500 series. If you're familiar with Dymos, you probably have either a 300 series or a 400 series. Most likely a 400 series, because that's what we've had the last several years. And with the 400 series, with Dymo did not restrict you to using specific labels. You could use whatever labels you want. They didn't have to be Dymo labels. So obviously we have our own labels, so that's what we use. Well, Dymo decided to change that with their 500 series. Now they have verification methods on the printer that will detect what type of label you're using. And if you're not using Dymo labels, you cannot use that printer. And we can't use Dymo labels. We have our own proprietary label size, and we can't use Dymo labels. So we actually had to stop using Dymo altogether. It really is not a good situation for Dymo because they lost a lot of customers this way. And on top of that, Dymo's not even manufacturing the 400 series printers anymore. So the printers are really hard to find. If you find a 400 series Dymo printer, consider yourself lucky because they're not easy to find. Do not buy 500 series printers. Do not buy a Dymo 500 series printer and expect it to work with our apps, because it's not going to. We did have a couple of customers that did buy their own 500s thinking it would work, and it just does not. So that's actually why we had to go ahead and look for a different printer. And the Bixalon we went with because it was the only one that actually worked. We had several other ones that were very finicky, were very hard to set up. If you set up the Bixalon, you know that it's not easy, but it's doable. And it's a lot easier than some of the other options that we had we're going to require. So yeah, that was really why we got rid of the Dymos. It's really on Dymo that they decided not to encourage and support companies using their own labels. So they're going to lose a lot of business, I think, that way, but that's neither here nor there. We've got our printer, and that's sort of what we're going to be using. So yeah, if you need help getting the Bixalon set up, reach out to us. Like I said, it can be a little bit more difficult than the Dymo. So reach out to us, and we'll help you get it set up. All right, good questions. All good questions. Any other questions from you guys? All right. Like I said, if you miss any part of this webinar or want to watch it again, just reach out. Look out for that email. You will receive that, and that'll have a link for the video, so you can go ahead and review that. So we do appreciate you guys joining us. Join us next month for a whole new topic. We generally, I don't think we did it this month, but we will send out a newsletter that will sort of reflect what that month's topic is going to be about, or that week's topic is going to be about. So look out for that. And we will talk to you guys soon. We thank you very much for joining us. We hope you guys have a great day.